I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one that found out about their PCOS, their thyroid disorder, or any autoimmune disease they had at the worst time of their life, or after going through a lot of stress, or losing somebody. I had all of those things, and it actually happened during COVID. I had just moved to New York City. I could not believe it. Like, I really, really never thought I would be that privileged girl that would land in New York City, go to NYU, my dream school that I don't even know how I got in. And my life was starting. It was amazing. I was super excited living alone for the first time in a big city, quite a stressful city, but everything was great. Everybody has stresses when, it's your first time out of the nest and you're living alone and you're in college. It's a very common experience that we all go through. I did not have the best living situation with the person I shared my roommate. Like, my roommate was just very different from me. Like, I am somebody that has to sleep in a very, very cold room. And this person loved to live in a sauna. Woke up at 5 in the morning, all lights on, got dressed as if nobody else was in the room. And I did not wake up at 5 in the morning. So the sweating, the heat, I mean, again, lovely girl. We were just a terrible match. Went to bed, had a nightlight on, quite a bright nightlight on, and sings in her sleep. So I was already starting the year sleep deprived, not in my happiest, and COVID hits. By then, I thought it was a blessing because I was finally going to be able to go back home for a few weeks. What is going on? There's like a sickness going on. Like, I didn't really, none of us really understood what was going on. And I was relieved. But I had also just met Lucas. Lucas, his family's international. His mom was in Lebanon during this time. His dad was in Mexico during this time. He was not in the country. And Lucas lived alone in New York City. And I did not want him to be in the epicenter of COVID. So my family opened the doors to him, and I was so happy about that. He was gonna, meet my family. We had known each other for a month. But in Mexican families, like, you introduce your significant other very quickly, even before you guys even start dating. It's a cultural thing. So I thought everything was gonna go great. So I was really prepared to just have a few weeks of fun, have my family meet my boyfriend. And oh my God, was I so wrong? I was so wrong. It was hell. I'm not going to go into the details because it's not my story to tell. I mean, I want to respect the privacy of people involved in these stories, but let's just say it was not the ideal situation for my family to meet my boyfriend, especially during the time where the company my dad was working for was literally going bankrupt. So yeah, peak stress, new person in the house, Latina mother. So my number one goal was to get the fuck out of my house and go back to New York. That seemed impossible because my parents are very overprotective, and even though the travel ban was lifted, they were still like, oh my God, if you go to New York, you're gonna die. Like, COVID must be in the air, you're gonna inhale it, there's no way. But the environment in my house at the time just got very, very toxic. Nobody's really to blame. I know I'm not the only one that says this. There was just a lot of stress on everybody. And I felt really stuck. I didn't really know what to do. But something I forgot to tell you guys is that before COVID happened, like literally the day of my birthday, February 12th, I got a message while I was in New York because I posted a picture of myself in New York City. I geotagged the location, and a modeling scout saw my picture, and she sent me a DM and she's like, hey, do you model? And I'm like, no. Like, when I tell you guys, I know nothing. Like, back then, I knew nothing about fashion. I had never bought a magazine. Like, I know nothing of the fashion industry at all, but I loved photography growing up. I told her no, but I'm very comfortable behind a camera because I've always been the one taking photos. So I knew what to expect. And I went to meet them at their offices, and I literally got signed to my agency. And it was so funny because it just really happened so quickly and like that. Like I never applied. Like guys, I'm telling you, like if you're from Mexico, modeling is not typical because unfortunately, I mean, the stigmas around modeling, especially in Mexico, it's just looked down upon, which is really sad. But I never even entertained it. Like it wasn't even an option. And so that was lovely. That happened. So when things got really difficult at home, I was saying, oh my God, wait, Lucas has to go because if he stays any longer, he's never going to want to speak to me again. And he shouldn't have to go through all of the issues that my family has. Like it's not fair. So he leaves, goes back home when the restrictions are lifted. And I realized I don't want to be here either. And I want to, of course, be with Lucas. We were in the honeymoon phase of just meeting. So I found a way. I spoke to my agency and they were very encouraging that I could pursue this full time. And so I proposed it to my parents and I'm like, hey guys, the work restrictions, the travel restrictions are lifted. I just got this crazy opportunity with a really good agency. And instead of just sitting around here in Dallas, I could be in New York City making money and, doing bigger things, which I was so glad they agreed. So I arrived to New York City and oh my goodness, that beautiful New York City that I loved was completely gone. If you were in New York City during this time, you know what I mean. Unfortunately, there was a lot of mental illness in the streets. There was a lot of drug addiction, a lot of needles everywhere when I would walk. It was really, really sad. And in fact, I was followed by a homeless woman. It was not even, that looked completely normal, but she just decided to attack me in front of people at a pharmacy, at a CVS. And I was so, so scared. Like she slammed me against the wall. I was covered in bruises. I was literally like, my leg was shaking like a dog. I was so scared. And by the time the cops got there, they're like, oh, ma'am, you're like the 10th one this morning. So the stress was in the air. It was not the best thing ever. So I had to like toughen up really quickly. And I am always like, I've always been very naive. I'm from Mexico City where the hospitality, I mean, if you guys have been there, everybody's so kind. And Southern hospitality in Texas, everybody is so kind, so laid back. So going to New York, you really have to toughen up. And I did, but it was not easy. I had much more stress in my system. I had to walk around with 8 eyes. That's what Lucas's dad would tell me all the time. Mila, when you walk out, you have to have 8 eyes, baby, because you really never know what could happen. And, I started working. I got great jobs, enough to finally get an apartment. And so I did, which was another very big stressor because now I had to afford rent every month and the rent was being increased due to, I mean, they always do it every year, but the price increase during COVID was wild. And I was in a building that I had so many issues with them. Either way, big girl problems. All these things were happening. I was now working. I had rent and bills to pay. And then I got a call from my dad that was really sad because I always grew up in a very privileged way. I was super privileged in the fact that I never had to care about my next meal. I never had to care about affording gas for my car, about my education, nothing. Like, it is extremely privileged. And when I got the call from my dad, he's like, hey, I cannot afford your school anymore, cannot help you right now. Your expenses are also very high because you're in New York City. You need to come back home. I was so sad because I had just met the dad of Lucas and it was just the three of us during this year of the pandemic. Like we would call ourselves the Three Musketeers, and we would do everything together from breakfast, lunch, dinner, getting a coffee, going for a walk. It was such a beautiful friendship we had. So I told my dad, you know what, Dad, don't worry. I'm going to figure out like a financial aid plan. I'm actually going to pay for it. I'm going to do it because I'm finally starting my life. I love where I am right now. I'm very happy and I can do it. So I entered my girl boss era, which was amazing, guys. Like, I reached out to my agent, Taylor, that I absolutely adore. She was amazing. Like, whatever job she could find for me, like, we were speaking every day. I was going to castings. She was getting me booked. She was so, so good. So I was able to afford my education, my rent, my groceries, and, all the basics, and still have a little bit of savings for any emergencies. And even though I had undergone a lot of changes in my life and I was under a lot of new stress, I was still managing it. I wasn't really at my best, but like, that happens when you take a lot of responsibilities. You have a year of adaptation. But in December of 2020, I go back home for Christmas to spend it with my family. Lucas spends it with his mom and dad in New York. And his mom came from Lebanon. I got to meet her as well. I adore her. And unfortunately, a day after Christmas, I get a call from Lucas and immediately calls me. I was the first person he called and he says, Mila, I really need your help. I don't know what's going on. My dad is not okay. So I tell him immediately, like, Lucas, hang up with me right now. Call 911. Long story short, guys, he passes away, and it was so unexpected. He was perfectly healthy, and in the course of a few hours, he passed away. And I was not in the same city. There were no red-eye flights like there usually were to New York. And I had to wait, and I cried my eyes out from 1 a.m. until I boarded the plane. Even on the plane, like, my eyes were about to fall off my head, just have attacks come every few minutes where I would just wail and cry because, it was my first big, big loss. It was somebody that I really adored. And I don't feel too comfortable talking about these things because, again, it's not my story to tell. It's Lucas's father. And I know that one day he'll love to speak about this with you guys because he had a very difficult time as well, and a very difficult situation in regards to grieving. And, he lived with his dad. But the reason why I mention this is because having this gigantic loss during a time where my body was already undergoing a lot of stressful changes, I was really at the limit of what my body could handle. And I decided to girl boss even harder after that because now I had to be there for Lucas. And unfortunately, when all of this happened, I learned something so funny about death, which is that we all think that when somebody passes away, like, their loved ones are going to be loved and cared for, and they're going to have a ton of support because that's what we see in movies. But that was not the reality. Unfortunately, it was one of the times where I felt the most alone because, sure, people send you their condolences, but then that's it. It's quite silent because nobody likes to talk about death. Nobody likes to ask people questions because it's just such a sensitive topic that nobody knows how to handle. And that's one of the biggest issues. The fact that nobody talks about it, that there's this discomfort with something that is so natural. We're so fragile, guys. We can go at any moment in time. And it's something that also brought me and Lucas closer together tremendously because we really only had each other. Because at a certain time, people just get so uncomfortable with the fact that you are going through something so tragic and so sad. There's actually more distance. Like, people, I found some of my family members, even friends, that they put more distance because they just did not know how to react. And I was very angered in the beginning. I was very sad. And Lucas too, like, we were so disappointed in so many of our friends and so many of our family members. But then with time, we realized, it's not their fault that they were never taught of how to handle these situations. It's not their fault that they don't know what to do and they're just not comfortable with death. But not having the support, again, in my height of my girl boss era, thinking that I could fix everybody, thinking that I could fix any issue in my life, that I could help my family, that I could help Lucas, and that I could mend his broken heart. I was really like an octopus. I was putting my energy everywhere except in myself. And next thing you know, I started to get sick. And it all started in my gut. Most things, it all starts in the gut. I started to have really bad IBS. And so I started with my rounds of finding a good internist, internal doctor, and then I went to a gastroenterologist. I didn't like this person, so I went to another one. And as I tried to find doctors, some wanted to do surgery on me without even talking to me for 15 minutes. I got really scared, so I took a step back and I kept on with my life. Lucas and I kept pushing forward. Again, we were both not happy in New York. I mean, we had gone through so much in that city that the reality was we had to get out. I mean, you really cannot heal in an environment where you've gone through a lot of painful moments. So my focus shifted to, moving out of the city. So I went to Long Island with Lucas. But from IBS, then I started to have symptoms of hypothyroidism. So now my thyroid was being affected. And so I started to see endocrinologists, but still they were saying, oh, your TSH is like a 5, it's like a 6. Don't worry about it, you're fine, you're just depressed. So they started to medicate me. I started to take Zoloft. I started to switch my birth control method. Then I got a Mirena IUD. You can imagine, like, I was given so many medications. Also back then with a gastroenterologist, I was given antibiotics. I was given things for SIBO, you name it, like acid reflux, you name it. I took so many medications that I didn't need, but the stress was still there until it turned to weight gain. Hunger cravings, my period was missing, but I didn't really know. I thought it was my birth control. I thought it was my IUD. All my doctors kept telling me that I was completely normal, that I was fine, that all of my symptoms were just part of becoming a woman, that, I was entering my 20s. It happens, girl. Like, that's what they were telling me. Like, you're fine. Even my female OBGYNs. I started to have more facial hair. And I thought it was, like, I've had facial hair growing up and I was bullied for it because I just thought I was Mexican and it's just something, you have thick hair and I have Italian roots. So I'm like, yeah, I'm just hairy. No, it got much more pronounced. I started to grow hair around like a beard. All around my sideburns, it started to become very thick into my chin and this part of my jaw. And that was completely new. And on my belly button as well, like very thick hair. So that's where I realized, oh shit, like I don't think I turned extra Mexican when I turned 20. What's going on? So I, again, started to try to find answers, went on so many rounds with doctors. I found a great compound pharmacist that was able to tell me, Mila, you should try to get tested for Epstein-Barr virus. Have you ever had mono? And I told him, no, I don't think so. But I do remember I did get sick a lot as a child. Let me check. I was able to confirm that I had high levels of Epstein-Barr virus, and I was also, experiencing fatigue. I was just not working anymore as a model since I had gained 30 pounds. I was not looking healthy. Don't get me wrong, guys. Like, I could have been a plus size model, which is so well received in New York. And I know so many plus size models that I adore and they're killing it. But it didn't matter what size I was. I physically, like, even just in my eyes, I did not look happy. I did not look healthy. My mental health was in the ground as well. So Lucas and I made a little trip to France where he also held the funeral for his dad. And it was like a trip to see his family that he had not seen in a year, and for everybody to, check up on him and how he was doing and, think about different things. And that's where Lucas and I realized, you know what, we're both so lucky. Like, we're European citizens. We can move here without any issue. We can rent a house here without any issue. I mean, an apartment. We started to eat the food. We started to feel better. The city is so human. It's so beautiful. The architecture really takes your mind off things. And I see so much green when I'm walking around. I see, it's not even about the people. I felt like I was in a human environment. You can walk places. It's really built and centered around humans. You don't have gigantic skyscrapers that make you feel small. And you don't have those like horrible, massive buildings that you find all over Texas that it just doesn't look human. Like, it's bizarre. It's bizarre. I'm not a fan of it. Like, coming here, we felt so much relief. We felt like it was a great way to, do a detox And it was very difficult for me because my family was like not even approving of the fact that I lived in New York. So knowing that I was going to move countries to France, they were going crazy, but I didn't tell them until I got here. I was like, yeah, you know what? I told you guys I was going back on a trip, but now it's going to be a 6-month student thing. I'm going to become a French student and learn French to perfection. No, I was here to stay, but they kind of figured it out once they saw how happy I was, and they're totally okay with it now. But when I got to France, I don't know why, but my body just kind of let go. And I started to go through this detox where I looked my worst. I started to have a purge of acne. I started to have more inflammation than I ever had. I gained even more weight. I was just like, when you're working really hard and your immune system is like, okay, we got to hold it up together. Mila has a presentation or like this thesis to present. And then once you go on vacation, you get the flu or you get sick or you like let out whatever you were holding together. I feel like that's what happened to me when I got to Paris, because that's when I physically and mentally and emotionally, I just looked and felt my weakest and my worst. And thankfully, Lucas, I mean, he was always there, but when he saw that drastic of a change, that's where he realized I have to help Mila. Like, there's no doctor listening to her. She's always coming home frustrated. I have to help her out because she's literally like declining. And wow, did he help me? I mean, you guys know he went to my doctor's appointments. He found my endocrinologist because I did do some research. I did see some OBGYNs here, some naturopaths. They were all telling me, oh, just go back on the pill, until Lucas fought for me to get an appointment with one endocrinologist that his friend's mother goes to, that is like very well respected. She had like a 8-month wait list, and Lucas was like, no, like, you don't understand. She's not okay. He exaggerated. He got me a last minute appointment with her, and she diagnosed me with PCOS and hypothyroidism. But now that I tell you guys this story, you have to realize there's an undeniable connection between stress, grief, trauma, and our endocrine system. I think Lucas just got here. Enter, it's okay. Ça va. I can pause it. We got interrupted, and it's now 24 hours later. Lucas came in on a business call, and then it lasted longer than we anticipated. Then I got hungry. Either way, I'm back. And guys, I know I ran through a part of my life quite quickly. It was more complex than I shared. More sad things happened, but again, they're not for me to say. But to go back to, the pandemic we all experienced, it was really tragic. So many businesses failed, so many jobs were lost. The financial pressure was a nightmare for everybody. I mean, most people. The isolation, anybody with mental illness, I know, suffered tremendously. And all of us who lost any loved ones, I mean, we didn't get to have the closure we needed because of social distancing protocols. We didn't even get to have proper funerals. And since the pandemic, I mean, there's been a massive rise in medical conditions, in IBS, in cardiac problems. I know seeing any specialist, even for endocrine disorders, doctors are booked out for months, and some of the best ones are booked out for years because there has been such a big rise. Some because of COVID symptoms, others because of the just massive stress we all went through. And that's one thing that I want to briefly end on, is the fact that we all went through very different stressors. Some people really suffered much more than others, but there's no need for comparison, because my threshold for stress will always be different than anybody. And no matter what you're going through, the pain that you're feeling is valid, and the stress that you're feeling is valid. There's no need to compare yourself to a Girlboss, to compare yourself to CEOs, to David Goggins, because these people are different from you. Same with the food thing that I was talking about. Don't compare your food. Don't compare their careers with yours. You don't know what they've gone through. You don't know if they have medical issues that they're not disclosing. Nothing that we know on social media is real unless you truly know the person. So don't ever feel guilty about tapping out or saying, okay, I need a break, even though what you may be going through cannot compare to somebody else who lost their house or lost a loved one, etc. It is completely valid what you're feeling, which is why it's so important to take it easy. And I've been talking more about, starting a soft life. And before, I would have never wanted that. I used to be in my girl boss era, and I always thought, I have to be this type of woman that utilizes all of her hours in the day, and I have to use all of these privileges living in the US or speaking these languages to really go above and beyond and far. And you know what? It didn't serve me at the end of the day. It didn't serve me because I was stretching myself out very thin. And I'm not saying that you should be lazy. I'm not saying that you should only aim to have a soft girl life. I think this really applies to those of us that have suffered the consequences of going through chronic stress, and those of us that are coincidentally suffering with health issues after stretching ourselves out thin. And if your goals now have shifted from wanting to be a superwoman to now just, being happy with the simple things in life, those are both wins. Those are both incredible goals to have. They're just different. And in that headspace, I want you guys to be aware that the world is really designed by men, and stress in our bodies with our endocrine system, our menstrual cycle, we really react to stress differently. And for those of us with PCOS, there are studies that link childhood trauma to then developing PCOS later on in your life. It's not that we're more fragile or delicate, we're just different. And we have to do things a little bit differently than others, and that's totally fine and that's perfectly okay. Because when we learn to use our hormones to our advantage, when we learn to, find this balance that our body needs of support, of rest, we actually end up coming out with superpowers. We have an intuition that is so beautiful. It's like, I swear, when they're in tune with their bodies and everything is just working well, it is incredible what we're capable of doing. So don't get angry like I was in the beginning. I couldn't understand why I had gone through such a difficult time with Lucas. Lucas actually went through a much more difficult time. He lost his dad, and yet he did not go through the health issues that I did. And I couldn't understand why, when I get stressed and when I go through something difficult, why do I swell up? Why do I have flares in my health? Why do I have fatigue? And Lucas doesn't. For me, it was so unfair. And then, why did it take me years to figure out that I had PCOS? Why didn't my doctors start to look out for these symptoms when I first started to go to them, when I was 13, when I was 14? Why did it take such a big disaster, such red flag of symptoms? Why did I have to gain 30 pounds, lose my hair, have depression, panic attacks, and all of these symptoms for my doctors to finally start to take a look? And the cherry on top is, why did it have to take a male voice for them to actually give a shit? Why did it have to take my boyfriend going to my appointment and speaking for me, telling my doctor literally things she already knew, for her to say, okay, let's do these tests to rule out hypothyroidism, PCOS, and all of these other things? Why did it take a male voice? And yeah, it angers me. The fact that the original crash test dummies for cars were only of male dummies, and until 2011 they started to add in female crash test dummies, which is just crazy because 47% of women are more likely to be seriously injured in a car accident because of this mistake. Just like the fact that we've never really been included in scientific studies. Scientists thought that a male body was good enough of a representation of the human species, which is why medications out there, most of them, we don't even know how they react in a female body. But it's okay, because that's what I want to do with this platform, with everything that we are doing together. Because again, like I tell you guys, Mila Men Health and Pretty Hormonal, like any single platform I have is our work in progress. I only have one goal here, and it's to make your healing journey more simple, because you guys know it's a shit show out there and we don't even know where to look. We don't even know who to trust. I want to help you guys just make your journey less complicated, give you effective solutions that are actually going to help you, are worth your investment, are worth your time, and most of all, to raise awareness. Because truly, women's health, I mean, science has really failed us. But knowledge is power, and together we are going to make a difference. We're going to redefine women's health. We're going to do it. Just, it's a matter of time. But to end the video, if you're going through a difficult time, if you lost a loved one, or you're, seeing the consequences of being in a very chronic, stressful state, or you're still in that position, and, sometimes we do have to go through very uncomfortable periods of time. I've been there. Just make sure that you're taking care of yourself in the little ways that you can by habit stacking, finding those little 10 minutes of your day where you can do some self-care. It can be while you're doing your skincare, it can be while you're in the shower, little moments of your time where you can check in with yourself and see what you need. And my stress and cortisol video goes more in depth on techniques that you can use to regulate your nervous system and provide some support in those areas. But if you are specifically, grieving, take your time, because there's no set time of when you're going to feel better. Just know that it does get better. And the most important thing is to give your body that nutrition support, that nervous system support. Forget about your expectations. Forget about anything else. Nothing. Just pause. Be in the present and focus on what you need right now. Like right now. Not about 10 minutes ago. Right now. Ask yourself, how can I better my situation, my environment? How can I better my meals? Do you need some support for anxiety? Do you need to see a therapist? Do you need to journal a little bit more? Do you have a friend you can speak to? You just need to vent? Do you need some warmth? Can you get a bath? I wish I had a bath. Who knows, maybe supplements, magnesium, GABA, L-theanine, all these great little tools that you can use to make yourself feel better. And as you go through this investigation, it's going to take some trial and error. Maybe some things work, and then as you progress, you might not need them anymore. You might have to change your approach. Again, it's all very individual. But just remember that everybody is going through their own journey. We all have our different thresholds. We all have our different chapters of our life that are going to test us. And the way that you come out of this, your resiliency, which you will come out of it, you're going to come out of this with a superpower. And that's the most beautiful thing that I've learned in my experience. Even though I did go through a jam-packed year of hell, I ask myself sometimes, if I could have avoided all of that, or if that would have never happened, would I be a better person? And the answer is no. And Lucas and I, we've meditated a lot on this topic, and we realized that all of these challenges that we faced, they have lit a fire in us that I never had before. So as much as I'm angry that I had to go through such a difficult time health-wise and emotionally, and I had to sacrifice so much and, cut a lot of people out of my life, that it was very painful to do so, it is one of the best things that could have happened to me, because I see life in such a different way now. I see my health in a completely different perspective. I told you guys, I grew up very privileged, and I took so many things for granted. And now, not even like when I have a glass of water, I thank my water. Like, I literally have become so grateful for every day that I'm alive, and for the simple walks with my dog. And I wake up and I have like a different drive. I feel like I really tried to find the purpose and the beauty in everything, which might sound very cliche, but it's just the reality. Because when you see such sad scenarios for extended periods of time, you do lose hope. And you, even like religion, like I was so angry for the longest time. Like I didn't believe in anything. I didn't even get the point of life. I was very, very much a pessimist. But now that I'm in the other side, in the happier side, and I came out of it, I have an overwhelming sense of gratitude, because I realized the beauty and the value in the simplest things in life. And this FOMO that I used to have, these comparisons that I used to do, and these goals that I had for myself before all of this happened, I now realized they were so material, they were empty, they were vain, they were just not in the right direction of the things that were really going to serve me and do me good in the long run. And that's a little superpower that I didn't have before. I don't know what day I might not be here. And so I really try to give it my all in every single thing I do. I see the beauty in investing in experiences, in traveling, in, shared journeys and moments together with people. I'm not going to get that Chanel bag. I'm sorry. It's completely different. The material world, I really have no importance. I don't remember the last time I went shopping. I have literally asked you guys for makeup recommendations, and I'll get a restock soon. But I find the hardest time, just taking, but I still find it so difficult to do those things. But again, that's me. If you love your makeup and you love your Chanel bag and you love fashion, that's amazing. It's just, I don't. I don't. I think the person that I used to be was so innocent, ignorant, not in a bad way, but the life that I would have today, I feel like that person who I was before would still be thinking every day, how can I get a bigger apartment? How can I make more money? How can I get a nicer wardrobe? How can I, just try to always level up. And today I don't even think about that. I just think about my present. I'm more than happy in the place where I am today. I'm extremely grateful for it. And I hope that when you guys get through it, if you're going through a difficult time right now, or if you have gone through a difficult time, that's like the bittersweet beauty of going, because you are able to connect with others and your empathy is just heightened, and you have the power to truly help others and teach them the ways that you were able to go through it. And that's one of the most beautiful things about social media, because I never thought my story was ever going to be interesting. I never thought my journey was interesting. But I posted it, took a risk, because believe it or not, I'm a very private person and I never, ever wanted to have a public profile. But I did it on a whim, and I realized how much it resonated with other women. And I kept going and I kept going. And now it's been one of the most beautiful things that's happened to me. It is. So yeah, I'll end it here. And just remember, this whole entire journey, you're going to come out so much stronger than you ever thought. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.